Hi, everyone. Welcome to BIPOC Executive Search first live series. Thank you for rocking with us. Thank you for being here. Today's topic, we'll be diving into the title, Acquiring the Tools Needed to Land the Job. I am your host, Stacey Ann Buchanan, and I will be joined by my incredible teammates, Urmila Khan, Shirley Lay, and Jason Murray. So great to see you guys. How are you doing on this glorious Wednesday?
Doing well.
Okay, awesome. Before we get into it, I want to collectively humbly acknowledge that the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We're going to first introduce our team, and I'm going to start off with Shirley Lay. Shirley Lay is a social justice-informed psychologist licensed in Oregon, USA. Working as a consultant and BIPOC executive search, she focuses on recruitment, training, and EDI audits within higher education and nonprofit sectors. Hi, Shirley.
Hi, Stacey Ann.
Next up, we have Urmila Khan. Urmila brings 20 plus years experience leading strategic talent acquisition, contributing to business transformations in the healthcare, IT, engineering, and pharmaceutical sectors, among others through the creation of innovative recruitment programs anchored in diversity, equity, and inclusion. Migrating to Canada many years ago, throughout her career, Urmila has coached numerous executives and internationally trained professionals who have achieved fulfilling careers in Canada. Committed to making a difference while influencing positive change, Urmila takes an active role in the community towards creating a more collective, peaceful, and sustainable world. Hi, Urmila.
Hi, Stacey Ann. Hi, everyone. Hi, team.
Hi.
Next up, we have Jason. Over the course of his career, Jason has worked on over 300 executive searches, as well as a range of EDI services in partnership with client companies. Prior to founding BIPOC Executive Search, Inc., Jason worked at a multinational executive search firm, as well as a boutique search firm before that. For part of his career, he worked in the consulting division of Deltoy Canada as a human capital and strategy and operations supervisor. Jason Murray is a self-proclaimed geek, artist, and techie. Welcome, Jason.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Thank you guys for tuning in. So we're going to get right into today's topic, and it's called Acquiring the Tools Needed to Land the Job. So the first question that we have for you, team, is with respect to the actual job search, what advice can you give to a talent to make their search more successful? Let's start off with you, Shirley.
Thanks, Stacey Ann. So before I answer this question, I want to root it in my social positionality, like where I come from in this world. I identify as Chinese Mexican, born and raised in Canada. I came from a working class family with my mom not finishing even elementary school. My grandmother is illiterate. My dad finished high school. And so I pretty much had no social capital, coming into the professional world, the academic world. A lot of the times I had to navigate based on what I knew best and what other people told me with respect to what it is that I need to find success on a professional level. So I would say with respect to job searches, going all the way back, right, rather than starting at the point of looking at what's available online, going all the way back to do some dreaming first, right? What are your aspirations? What are your goals? Where do you want to get in your professional career? And once you've done some dreaming, then invite other people into your dreams and interview them and talk to them and really, as much as possible, talk about your why and why you're doing this. and then seek out mentorship and coaching along the way. So I find that for a lot of BIPOC individuals, especially those who are first generation in Canada or in the higher education system, is to rally your people, obtain the mentorship that you need, the social capital that you need to navigate the job search process. So I would say starting all the way from there rather than starting at the place of going online and looking for suitable opportunities.
Thank you, Shirley. Irmela?
Yeah, thank you, Stacey Ann. Thank you, Shirley. Just touching on what Shirley said, I think it really comes from a place of authenticity, right? And how does that translate into everything that you are, not just what you do on a daily basis? That should really come from who you are. If there's no one like you, so what is your passion? What are your goals? What is your unique selling property? Not necessarily coming across as a selling property, but what do you stand for? And identifying those organizations that align with those similar values, those beliefs. To Shirley's point as well, it's not just about applying to what's online. It's about finding out who you want to align yourself with. I think one of the things this pandemic has really taught us more than anything else, especially now, if we didn't know it before, is how do we want to spend our time? And how do we want to be, what makes us fulfilled? Which organizations do we want to align with as what we stand for? And seeking those out, whether on LinkedIn, as mentors, industries, groups, etc. But at the core of it, I believe it's being authentic to who you are.
I love that. So true. So true, Shirley, too. Appreciate it. Jason, off to you.
Yeah, sure. I'll add just a few things. So the comments that came up so far in terms of really thinking proactively is really what it comes down to, and not necessarily waiting for an advertisement to go up into the public domain. And so what that really means is think about the places that you actually would love to work. And when you think about the places that you love to work, think about how you can make yourself known to people there. So the great thing about technology such as LinkedIn is that you don't even have to know people personally to be able to say, okay, there's some people that are kind of second or third degree people from me that I can potentially let know who I am. And when you make an overture to them in terms of who you are, oftentimes it's really important to not just say, here I am, but to show them how you can add value. So if you already know something about the company and you say, I know that that company wants to pivot and do more with A or B or C, you can say, based on my background and experience, I know that I'm someone that can actually bring a unique lens to work that you're doing in this area. So certainly keep me in mind. Another tool would be try to know as many recruiters as possible. Recruiters are the in-between between candidates and the client organization. So if you can make yourself known to recruitment agencies, again, it might not be for a particular job, but you might want to say, here's my resume, here's who I am, here are some of the things that I'm really looking forward to continuing to do. They'll be able to keep you in mind. So you want to really think proactively as opposed to reacting.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Shirley. And thank you, Irmela. We're going to get into question number 2. What can a talent ask of a recruiter or HR hiring manager to ensure that they are putting their best self forward? And we're just going to start with you, Jason.
Sure. Questions are so important. Questions are actually a data point for an HR person or recruiter to be able to determine how engaged you are in the process. And so you can ask any question that really comes to mind for you in terms of the organization, which would help you put your best self forward. So if it's about culture, if it's about the disposition of the types of individuals that you would be working with, if it's what people have said about the company when they're being asked to go through exit interviews, you can actually ask that question. People don't always stay in a particular environment. So if you're curious to kind of get a sense of what people have had to say, that's actually a really fair question. I would also say that it's really, really important to just make sure that you are using it as an opportunity to say, how can I put my best self forward? So if your resume looks a certain way, actually ask the recruiter, is there anything that you would recommend that I change? Every organization is different. And so even if we're here to give you some tools, those tools may not necessarily be the best to employ when you're applying for job A, B, or C. So take advantage of the fact that the recruiter that you're speaking to or the HR person knows the organization and really get them to cough up the goods, folks, so that you know that you're doing what you need to do to advance in the process.
Thanks, Jason. Urmila?
Yes, absolutely. Echoing what Jason said, and as well as simple things, tangible things like the KPIs. You know, what are the 3, 6, 9, 12-month objectives of this role? What did the incumbent do that made them successful in the role? So sort of, again, trying to align your understanding of the role and using that time to gain more information about the organization, about the role. Another thing you can do to sort of even create collaboration or rapport with the interviewer is just finding out what brought them to that organization, right? What is it about the organization that they love? What is it about your role that you love? And that really tells you a lot as to how people represent their organization. It's important that you're being interviewed, but you're also interviewing in a way, right? It's really an exchange of who you are, who they are, and finding out if that's the right fit, determining if that's the right fit.
Thank you. Shirley?
Thanks, Stacey-Ann. I always invite people to build a relationship with us. I can't speak for any other recruitment firms, but I can strongly say that for ours, we're quite community and relationally centered. And so have conversations with us. Allow yourself to be curious, to be engaged, and to be open. And from that standpoint, then the creativity starts stirring, and then that's where the questions come about. Really ask us questions to help you reach where you want to go professionally. I often tell people we're here to bring your resume, your application alive. We're here to give it a voice and representation. Please tell me the pieces, highlight the pieces for me that you really want front and centered and advocated. And so those are some of the things that I try to have a conversation with, and conversations are both ways. So I often invite people to join in, to collaborate on the conversations, and to ask me any questions that come about that might facilitate their process in determining whether or not this is a good fit with them, and whether or not it aligns with their professional values and goals.
Okay, thank you, Shirley. Thank you, Shirley. Would you then say, collectively, then it's good when the talent builds a relationship with you, and then possibly something could come up and you're like, I remember XYZ. XYZ will be perfect for this job. Agreed? So I think it goes along with this quote that I saw a few years ago. It says something about, it's not about who you know, it's who knows you. So it's kind of like, it's like I can know Oprah, but if Oprah doesn't know me, it's not about just me just saying, it's just about who you know, right? It's just about building that relationship as well. So I really love that. I want the audience to know, because I don't know if I said this off bat, that the questions are going to take you through 4 different phases. And it's kind of like a journey on how you're going to land your dream job. So the first phase was the job search phase. Now we're going to go over to the resume and cover letter phase. And the first question we got was, in your opinion, what does an effective resume looks like? We're going to start off with you, Jason.
Delightful. There are many different forms of resumes, but there are 2 things that I really want to highlight. The first is you really should be highlighting accomplishments. So, if let's say doing a search that is related to finance and operations, a finance and operations person in one company will be doing similar work, will have similar responsibilities under their purview at the next company. And so seeing the technical pieces in terms of the what, that's understood. But when you think about what you can do to acquire your next job, you really want to do things that stand out. And your accomplishments are individual and unique to you. So if you can really take time under each job that you've had and each company that you've worked for to truly identify maybe 4 or 5 things that were accomplishments, those are the type of things that will have someone reviewing your resume say, wow, if the person was able to do those things there, they're obviously going to be able to do other great things here. The second thing that I would highlight is, again, everything is a data point, everything. And so the way that you're showing up on your resume, people are going to try to learn about you through what they see on paper, because that is the only interaction that they have with you up until you get to make your case in a speaking forum. So you really want to think about the structure of your resume. Don't feel that you can just have a resume that might not actually be formatted as meticulously as possible, because some people will think perhaps this person is someone who isn't detail oriented, or someone, if I can just be trite, is maybe a bit more on the lazy side as opposed to being willing to put in the work. So if you have people in your life that you trust, you can always say, just take a look at my resume. Is there anything that you think in here needs to actually be jazzed up in terms of structure, in terms of format, in terms of look, in terms of feel? Because sometimes, even if someone doesn't have the greatest accomplishments to speak to you, if they can hit out the park, the way it looks and the way that it's structured, and that is always within our control, that can actually be the difference in terms of what gets you in the interview. And then you can bring your charisma, uniqueness, and talent, as someone that we all know says, to try to land the gig.
I'm loving that. Shirley, what do you have to say to that?
Oof, how do I follow that? All right. So, us BIPOC individuals, people people who come from various cultures, we're really good storytellers, right? A lot of our traditions, our ancestral history comes through oral traditions, right? That's how we understand ourselves and this world and other people. So I would say really leverage that strength of ours and put it into your cover letter and resume. Really tell us a story about how you have handcrafted your professional background to get you to where you are today. Help draw in the reader by understanding what's your why, what motivates you to apply for this position. Help them understand exactly how you have planned out your career and marked out all the major milestones to get to where you are today. So I would say ensure you have a beginning, middle, and end, and allow this person to follow your line of thinking in that way.
Thank you. Thank you. Urmila, what can you add to that?
So how do I follow those two? So along the journey that Shirley's saying, is very foundational, who we are, that comes out on the resume, and what Jason's saying about tying in those accomplishments. I think it's really important to put in tangibles, especially on the resume. So in terms of money, what was the money? What was the budget that you were working with? What was the size of the team? How much money did you save the organization, or projects completed ahead of time under budget? It really paints a picture of who you are as an individual from your heart and soul, and also what you've accomplished. Essentially, it's how people hire people based on who they are, and also, are you saving me time, money, or sanity, really? What problem are we solving together? How are we adding value to each other? So I think it's really important to include those in a very concise manner. Shirley touched on a cover letter, and I know we're going to be talking about that in a little bit as well. But really look at your achievements within defined timeframes and be able to be proud of the journey that you took. If you were a mom who took some time off because you were taking care of your child, celebrate that, right? That's a part of who you are. If you took some time off during the pandemic to attend to mental health, celebrate that. Did you learn anything along the way? It doesn't really have to be what did you learn from which university, right? It's who you are as an individual. And I think those things really, it's the first impression that comes through on your cover letter and your resume. So
I'm loving all of this, and I'm learning so much. This reminds me of a meme joke that I shared with my brother, and the meme was about, back in the day when your mom used to tell you to take out the meat because she's coming home, and if she comes home at 3:00 and the meat isn't out, so the meme was saying that you're a designated meat supervisor or something like that. But it's not lying about your job. It's like a hostess could say, I'm the first point of contact when the clientele walks into the restaurant, right? So I think sometimes people, because they may look at their job and be like, this was a crappy job, like I didn't get enough pay or whatever, they may also downplay their own self. And I think what I'm hearing from you guys is to know, really big up your accomplishments. You have done this. You have done this job. Acknowledge that you've done this and what you've learned from the job and what you can also bring to the table. Because, hey, you may be a hostess, but you may be an incredible hostess. You may bring clients in. You may be so warm. So I'm really loving this. I'm going to go into the next question. And I am loving this question. It says, so in relation to the previous question, what are 2 or 3 big no-no-nos when putting together your resume? Let's see. Shirley, let's start with you.
Thanks, Stacey Ann. So to really hit it home, to really emphasize this point, one of my no's is don't downplay accomplishments. Easier said than done. And I speak from personal experience. I come from a collectivistic background, and so I've been socialized, and as a woman of color too, socialized my entire life to never stand out, to never put yourself out there too much, to be humble and to be in the background, try not to take up too much space. And so what happens is that when this narrative is in my head, it gets reflected in whatever written document I produce. And so, tying it back to my earlier point about building a relationship with us, this is what we're here to do. We are here to amplify your voices and to really affirm your potential. We are here to let you know, like, hey, I see something on here, but it doesn't seem quite fleshed out. Tell me about what other things that you've done. And so we can do that in relationship. You don't have to rely on yourself. Certainly you can pull in people from your tribe, from your community, but also view us as part of your community and helping you really highlight assets that would strengthen your application and would make a compelling argument as to why you are the one for this job. My second piece is to never leave your destiny to the fantasy of the reviewer of your resume. Right. So a lot of people will go, okay, well, I put down these accomplishments, so they should be able to link it to whatever it is that they need. Let me tell you, they will not be able to link it. And you don't want them to link it for you because they might tell a false story about you. So take ownership of your story and make the linkages for them. So, for example, if you've accomplished something in the past, indicate that and tell them exactly how you're going to apply it into the job. And in that way, you're starting to really let the reader know what your thought leadership is, your understanding of how to strategize and how to approach whatever role it is that you're applying for.
Okay, I am loving this. Jason.
Sure. So, when we are putting together a resume, essentially we are putting together a story. We're putting together a narrative of different life events when it comes to our professional experiences. And when you are providing your resume to whether it's a recruiter or whether it's to a hiring committee, they're essentially what people do, and it's just kind of the natural reaction is they're trying to see if the story makes sense, right? So people are putting their detective hat on to be like, does it make sense? So if there is like something that someone is saying, does it actually compute as making sense to me? Obviously, people need to make sure that they're hearing from the direct person, but on paper, you want to make sure that things make sense. So, one thing that I would say is, try not to embellish things in a way that would just be like, that doesn't necessarily make sense. Or try not to avoid putting certain things in for people to say, is there reason for concern that I'm not seeing, dates of when they've worked at a particular organization? Put that information in. So you really want to make sure that you are putting together your resume in a way where someone reviewing it will say, based on what I'm seeing, everything adds up and everything makes sense. Now, the great thing about being able to work in partnership with recruiter is that you can have conversations with them to say, before it gets in front of the client, I want to ask you, are there certain things that you anticipate the organization saying something doesn't make sense? And if that's the case, how can you help me to make sure that I'm putting my very best self forward, because I've now had an opportunity to vet this and have the conversation with you. So bringing back another conversation from earlier in this discussion, really use the recruiter for that piece as well. Before it goes in front of the client, you want to make sure that they are giving you their very best advice about how the paper screen part is going to work in your favor.
Wow, thank you, Jason. Armila?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the heart of this entire conversation, this 1 hour that we're talking, is really putting your best self forward, like Jason just said. And sometimes we depend on the recruiter to do that. the recruiters to do that for us, which is what Shirley was touching on. So, what inspires you to focus on this particular role that's in front of you right now, or that you're so passionate about, and being able to communicate that not in a generic way. I'm not looking for any job. I'm looking for this job. I'm looking for this role, this function, because X, Y, and Z, because this is how it's important to me as an individual. This is how it ties in to what I've accomplished in the past. This is how it lines up with, ESG, environmental and social governance. So I feel time and time again, we all create one profile of who we think we are, or who we feel we are, without really putting our heart and soul into that. And like Shirley said, connecting the dots, right? The resume or the cover letter that I prepare for A organization may not be what I should not be, should not be what I prepare for B organization, right? And it's really taking the time. Go to the company's website, understand who the leaders are, who's the leadership team, and connect those dots. Really, really take the time. On a more specific basis, like Jason said earlier, though, it's in the minutest details, especially at the leadership level, in terms of spacing, spelling, all of that. And, it sounds very basic, but it is the first impression that people are really getting of you. So I think it's just, you don't list your tasks, list your accomplishments. How did that transform the organization? And why do you really want this role? Why do you think it's a great fit? Target it.
I'm loving all of this, and to the audience that's watching, I know this is going to be recorded, and you may be able to watch it again. But please get a note, get a pad or something, and take down these gems, because our team is giving you guys gems that we need. I'm going to go into number 5, and I'm going to start with you, Urmila, since I have you on the screen. What advice do you have for putting together a strong cover letter?
So with a cover letter, I feel this is your first opportunity to really converse, right? Whether it's with us as recruiters, as executive search consultants, or the client, or both. If you were having a conversation with the client, what would you say what's on your cover letter is really what it comes down to, right? That cover letter needs to show, your voice needs to come through in that cover letter. Shirley talked about our voice earlier. Jason touched on that as well. This is your voice. This is your cover letter. This is your story. Who are you, and how do you align? Why are you so passionate about this particular role, right? It's about, again, taking the time to connect those dots. The resume shows a list of accomplishments with respect to the role, and so does the cover letter. But in the cover letter, you really get to give a sense of who you are. Story, cover to cover.
I'm loving this. Shirley, what can you add to this?
Yeah. My invitation is always for people to put one together. Before we go into what goes into it, definitely put one together. Certainly it's industry specific. I have a partner who reviews resumes without looking at the cover letter, and that's his industry. But I would say at the senior and executive leadership level, we really want to hear your voice and understand, how do you think about the work that you do? What is your philosophy? What is your approach? What's your angle? What's your selling point? And that can only come through so much in a resume. And I find it so useful to jump into the letter to really find out who this personality is, right? That is often the voice that captivates me on an emotional level. So I would say definitely, and I think I said this before, have a strong why, right? Why is it that you are here today? Why is it that you have arrived and that you are ready and poised to take on this position? Oftentimes, and I'm just doing a little bit of self-reflection, is that this kind of work needs to go back all the way into one's childhood, right? Where life is all about fantasizing, dreaming, wishing and aspiring. And once we become grown-ups, for some reason, those things are stamped out of our lives. And so if it's hard to really pull out your why, I would strongly invite you to go back to childhood and notice what moved you, right? What moved you to your soul that really motivates you to endure a process of going through a search process of looking for work, going through interviews, going through references. It's a marathon. So your why needs to be really strong. And if you can captivate some of those sentiments in your letter, then that's what's going to capture the interest and the eagerness of the reader, and that desire to reach out to you to have a further conversation.
Thank you, Shirley. Off to you, Jason.
Thanks so much to my colleagues. There are two main things that I often say people that are reviewing a letter are looking out for. Even if they're not conscious to it, it's what they're doing. So one of the two, people are looking for how you would describe who you are, right? Whether that's your leadership style, your philosophy, what moves you. And then the other thing is that people are trying to really get a sense of your engagement with the organization you're applying to and what appeals to you about the organization, what you can do and how you can add value, right? One of those two things can be boilerplate. So the thing that can be boilerplate is the former, who you are, what moves you, your philosophies in terms of your style. And then the other piece should be changed, obviously, because it's different organizations and people really want to get a sense that you know them. So the boilerplate part with respect to who you are, you really want to knock that out of the park. I mean, I would say if you wanted to give yourself a homework assignment over the weekend, come up with a paragraph that just talks about who you are in the most compelling way. So if you need to say, I am a staunch advocate for, human rights, if you have to say, I am someone who really enjoys coaching and mentoring people in ways that really allows them to thrive in their lives. However you can encapsulate the who you are, people will say, okay, wow, like I really am moved by those elements that I'm reading. And then the other side of it, which is what will take the work when you're applying to a brand new job, is find out about an organization in terms of what their values are, what some of their goals are, and speak to those things. So it's not enough just to say, okay, well, the company is Nike and I like shoes, right? And so therefore, what appeals to me about the companies I like shoes, if they are delving right now in this moment in time into more digital and they are transmogrifying their organization in terms of we used to do this and now we're pivoting into more online and we're pivoting into different types of shoes. Maybe you are now saying, I really feel that I am someone that can actually help the brand pivot into different ways of marketing and providing their business to customers. So those are two main things. One, make it boilerplate, because what we're trying to encourage you is give that deep thought to knocking up the park who you are. And if you can spend, a couple of hours in framing that, you have something that should appear on every letter. And then the second part is, okay, what organization is this? Find out about some of the key things. It doesn't have to be a laundry list, but some key things, and respond to those key things. And that actually is an easy exercise, because essentially, just like when we're in school and we're asked a question, and then when we're in responding, we have to put part of the question in the response. What I heard is, that's essentially what you're doing. What I'm seeing is, and then you say, I can do that, right?
Yeah.
So, there you go.
I'm loving this. You know what this reminds me of? Would you say that a cover letter is essentially your 5-minute elevator pitch? Would you say that it could be like
not that long? 5 minutes.
No, but like it's your elevator pitch. It's like who you are, what do you do, how are you a change maker? What do you bring to the table? Essentially, it's like you're selling yourself. It's like if you're in an elevator with Barack Obama and you have 5 minutes to tell him who you are, what do you do, and what do you bring to the table. Your cover letter should be that.
But yes, Stacey, absolutely.
2 minutes, yeah, it should be your okay. Okay, thank you. We're gonna go into the interview process now. So our first question is, what are 2 or 3 ways to stand out in a job interview? Shirley, let's take this one.
Thanks, Stacey Ann. So I do this all the time when I go for job interviews, and this helps soothe my nerves, is to envision myself as a consultant, right? I have been brought into this company, they have a problem, and I have tools to resolve them. and to stand firm and strong in my power and to stay integral to my values. Right? That's the kind of energy I really bring forth and draw upon whenever I go into an interview. So that's my first one. My second one is know that the time is very limited with the hiring committee. It might be 45 minutes, it might be 60. And so make every word count. Everything that comes out of your mouth, ensure that it's representative of who you are as a working professional. We often invite people to think about, generate really good questions to ask the hiring committee. Take those questions as moments of gem and opportunity to really showcase your thought leadership that only you as a consultant would know to ask those concise questions, right? Questions with precision, right? So allow them to know more about you based on what you share with them, and information, again, that only you would know as the consultant, or only you would know as an intersectional being, right? So for example, using myself, only me as an Asian identifying woman of color, first generation, only I would have that information. So I often draw upon those things as I step into the room to hopefully allow myself to stand firm and strong in my own power.
Thank you, Shirley. Urmila.
To Shirley's point, I think it's all in the phrasing, right? And you know, most of us are familiar with the STAR acronym: situation, task, action, and result. And you're all stars. Stacey Ann, Shirley, everyone listening in to us, Oprah and Barack Obama as well.
Wait, are they listening, Urmila? Do you hear?
They are. Oh, they are. They're watching.
Well, if Oprah didn't know who Stacey Ann was before, you know, let's give it a time. Anyway, the STAR responses, right? Situation, task, action, result. And that sort of frame really helps you. What was the situation or task that you were working on? What was the action that you took? And what did that result in? And I find sometimes people focus on what the results were for that particular project. But if you can show the bigger picture, so how did that impact the department? How did it impact the team? How did that impact the consumer base, the customers, the economy, the world that we live in? How were you part of that bigger transformation beyond what's on your desk? Sorry, we're sounds are coming through here right now. But do you know what I mean? So it's
yes.
Very, very concise, and able to think in a very strategic way. Touching on Shirley's earlier point as well about your persona and being a consultant, I think it's really important that your charisma comes across in a very humble, confident way. So, you know, you can show up as a consultant, right? But it's also important to show up very humbly as a consultant, echoing what Shirley says, so that humility, that individual, that humanity comes through. People are not connecting dots based on just roles these days, right? It's the culture, and culture is something that's consistent. You don't teach culture. Culture is just who you are, who the members of the organization are. And so using that 45 minutes or that 60 minutes to convey that as to who you are and how you connect those dots and also learn about them, I think really sets you up for success, if that's what you want.
Thank you, Urmila. Jason.
Sure. I mean, when you get to the interview, so much of it is about how you're going to make people feel, right? And so you have to really frame your mind around that. And we have to be honest with ourselves. Interviewing is a bit of a performance, right? You're trying to think about being on time for the interview. You're trying to get everything out before the end of the interview that you're there to share. And so you really have to prepare yourself. You want to dress the part. You want to think things through in a way that says, I have to make an impression. And so I'm going to really keep all of that in mind and you're going to bring something different when you do so. A couple quick things. So when you're trying to make people feel a certain thing, you really want to leave them with stickiness factor. And there's ways to actually do that. So when answering a question, oftentimes people on the panel want to be able to follow what you're saying, right? If the more they can follow what you're saying, the more they're going to remember, and that stickiness factor. So sometimes, and you might be hearing us say it from time to time, where we say there are two things that we really want to highlight, or there are, a few things that really stand out for me. Then when you go through those 2 or 3 things, you finish in a certain period of time. So bringing back what Shirley mentioned in terms of the importance of keeping track of that. And then you also too leave them with just enough, because you want them to be able to remember and follow you. And even you just setting up an answer saying there are 2 things that I want to highlight here, is it makes them say, okay, we're looking out for 2 things. So already we're following. So the better you can do that, the better the outcome. Also, when especially when going for leadership roles, so much of what people are looking for when on a panel is, and I'm going to be a bit colloquial here, if you have a quick muscle twitch. So a question's thrown at you, and how quickly can you have a compelling, meaningful response without needing to kind of take too much time to search for it. So there are many different types of people. One type is someone who you can throw anything to, and they respond pretty quickly, and they're on their mark all the time. If that's not you, don't despair. What you should do is you should take a moment to make sure you're writing down the question. That is giving you some time to think about what your response will be. And I recommend that everybody actually write down some jot notes to questions, but particularly if you're someone that can't just be thrown something almost like a politician and then come up with a compelling response, you really should be using that tactic to your advantage. Jot down what they're saying. You're also thinking about a respond. Take a breath. There are 2 things actually that I would like to bring up here in response to that really good question. The first of which, and then that's your answer. So those are a couple of tips that I would use to respond to that, Stacey Ann.
Thank you so much, Jason. The second question to this interview process will be like, share some tips, but I feel like you all answer that within what are 2 or 3 ways to stand out in an interview. So we're going to go through our last question. And this one is, we're in the references phase now. Okay. And our question is, as a candidate, what should they be thinking about when they're assembling the references? So as a candidate, what are they thinking about when they're assembling their references? Start off with you, Jason, since we have you on.
Thank you. So with respect to references, when we're doing references, and again, some others who do references may not be conscious to this, but this is what they're doing. They're not just listening out for the content of this person's so great. They're listening out for the enthusiasm in terms of how someone's sharing it. So, oh my goodness, this person is fantastic, and I would hire them again, and you can't go wrong. Like, they're really looking for someone to be emotive. Some people are naturally emotive, and some people are not as emotive. So, you might want to think about people who you feel are going to really bring like a real flair to the way that the conversation is going, because there's so little time in any process to learn as much as you can about someone who's going to come into your organization and potentially be there for years. And so that is always helpful, to choose references that it's going to be a great conversation if I have person AB actually on the call with the recruiter, with the organization. And you also want to think about people who can speak to what you've done. So you're not always going to capture all of that on a resume. You're not always going to bring all that up in an interview. Here's another opportunity for someone to just add to everything else someone has learned. So really think about people who can give really great info.
Thank you so much, Jason. Off to you, Shirley. What's your take on that?
Thanks, Stacey Ann. So a lot of people might think, once I get to the references stage, I've got it in the bag. And I would say continue to play a strong game all the way to the end. To piggyback on Jason, what Jason has already indicated, really find ambassadors of your work, right? These are co-conspirators. These are people who can speak about your work passionately, want to talk about you for hours and hours on end, have a lot of evidence and experience to comment upon. Even if you find somebody who may know your work, but then may not have the precision or the economy of words to describe you, you may want to think twice in terms of selecting this person. Again, these are people who represent you, and the way that you craft, right, the panel of individuals who represent you says something about you as well. Again, at every point there is an evaluation, and when we're being head to head with yourself and another candidate, it's these minute things that we use to make a determination about your qualifications and your fit for this role. So I would say bring some intentionality to who you want to bring. These are supposed to be your kinspeople, right? These people who are going to rally for you all the way to the end. And even if you don't get the job, you might go to them to debrief as part of the process. So that's what I wanted to add to the references piece.
Thank you, Shirley. Over to you, Urmila.
Yeah, no, my colleagues have raised so many important, critically important and true gems, like you said, Stacey-Ann, earlier. In addition to the achievements that you want this person to be able to highlight, I feel it's really important that they can also speak to your character and to your goals. Mm. Has this person empowered you in the past? And if they haven't, why didn't they? Or do they believe in you? Are they able to speak to what you've done and to what you're capable of, right? And to Jason's point, how somebody speaks about you is an extension of how you made them feel. And like Jason mentioned earlier, my colleagues have mentioned, is all about the feeling in addition to the contribution that you make, right? Beyond the day-to-day, A to Z, how you save money, how you save time. Who are you as an individual? What is my day going to look like with you on the team, right? How do you contribute to the organization? Are you someone who loves learning, right? It's not, if you don't have everything that's required for the job, that's okay to some degree. How do you envision learning and growth, right? So references, I think, are just one of the most important factors as you go through this entire process to really help the client and the recruiters get a better sense of who you are as an individual.
Thank you. Thank you. You're all so awesome. I'm learning so much throughout this too. And I know our audience is learning. We have so many questions. We've got a truckload of questions, but I think because of timing, I'm going to go through one of the questions, and then I'm going to ask you guys a last question to round off our talk right now. So one of the questions coming in is, how do you actually get started with working with a recruiter? Do you just reach out to a search firm and tell them you're looking? Jason, let's have you. Yes.
Yeah. So there's different types of recruiters, different types of agencies. There are some that do work on behalf of really the candidate. So they try to shop you around essentially and see if there is some traction to then be able to get an interview. Generally, those aren't the most senior search firms though. Generally, that's more entry level, maybe middle level management, and you can do some Googling to see who some of those individuals are. For firms like us, an executive search firm, basically what you want to do is, again, just get your resume into their inbox. So if you are looking online and you see that a firm has individuals that are focused in a particular area that is of interest to you. So, a partner that is focused on technology or on financial services or on public sector. Generally people have their email addresses. You can always just drop them a line and give your resume over. Same thing with a firm like ours. We always want to hear from people. We do our very best to follow up, and we certainly keep people in mind. So that's the best way. Just make yourself known. Generally, what would then happen is recruiters would get in touch with you if there's anything that comes up, but you still want to mind their websites and any other ways that they put out there what they're working on so that you can proactively follow up when things come up as well. And over time, as you are then speaking to people on the phone and getting to know them, again, really make it very clear some of the things that you are interested in, some of the things you can do. And hopefully what will then happen is you see yourself in a role through working with that particular organization. But I should stress that, sorry about that, Stacey-Ann, that for executive search, really the emphasis is being retained from the client organization side as opposed to being an agent for individuals.
Thank you, Jason. We have one last question that I'm going to try and put into today's talk before we get into the last fun question that I have for you. And it goes, what is the best way to go about asking for accommodations for a job interview? How much information is a recruiter allowed to ask for? Shirley, I believe can you take this one, Shirley, please?
Yeah, for sure. So, part of our job is to ensure that everyone starts at the same position of the starting line of a race. As we know, there are some people who start further back. There are some people who are carrying extra weights when they're starting the race. And so we want to make sure that we address all those pieces. So, for example, for somebody who are blind or who with visual impairments, being on Zoom is a different experience, and there's software that is needed for them to ensure that they are able to put their best foot forward. And so if you're working with a recruiter, ensuring that the recruiter knows exactly what it is that you need for you to be playing at the same level playing field as everybody else, we want to hear about that. It's important to have a conversation with us. It's important to collaborate with us so that we can bring forth some of these pieces to the hiring committee so that we can advocate on your behalf. So that we can make it as dignifying of an experience as possible for you.
Thank you, Shirley. Okay, so now we're going to get into the fun question. And this is a question I want to ask you guys before we all exit from today's talk. So, what words of encouragement can you give to someone who may be navigating through the waters of living their passion versus taking a job that pays extremely well and that they can do basically in their sleep? What kind of words of encouragement would you give someone who's in that heavy space where they don't know, do I go for my passion or do I go for the job that pays really well? But this is my passion. This is what I love. Jason, let's go with you because I know you got to go soon. So let's go with you.
For sure. That's a really great question. And, there's so many ways to answer that question. I mean, one thing that I would say is that oftentimes earlier in someone's career, they may end up taking certain positions that aren't all things passion, right? Because they're trying to, build up their resume. They're trying to get experience. They're trying to pay bills. They're trying to, discover different types of environments to kind of have a more sharply defined sense of where they want to focus. And then the further you go in your career, you actually start to develop more the luxury of saying, you know what, I want to actually be led by passion. I am going to say no to, being that consultant at a Big Four company. And I'm going to actually, open up a popsicle stand or a lemonade stand in the Bahamas, right? Like, so different points in people, I just want to acknowledge that different points of people's journey, they may have different conditions around them that might actually inform what they end up doing. But I would say that it is critically important to have that conversation with yourself about what is actually going to give you peace of mind, what's going to make you not lose sleep at night. And so if you are in environments where you feel like it really is just about the paycheck, you really should ask yourself if it is causing you to lose brain cells and really important other pieces of your life. That's really not worth sacrificing for doing something that you're not passionate about or is just a way to kind of make a buck. So everyone has to have that conversation as an individual and just continue to seek support to end up saying what your decision is going to end up being.
Thank you so much, Jason. Jason, do you feel like right now you have to exit because we know you have another appointment and we're grateful for your time being here. So
no, for the next 2 minutes for sure.
Okay, great. We're very aware of time. Shirley, do you want to take this question?
Yeah, I have a complicated relationship with this question. Because as BIPOC individuals, a lot of us don't have the luxury or the privilege to be in our dream jobs. And I can rattle off a long list of reasons for why. I want to say that people's work is only one part of their identities. We live in a really capitalistic world where we're made to believe that every single person needs to have the dream job. But it is not a realistic goal for everybody. So again, your professional identity is only one of your identities. You are made up of a lot of other identities. You might be a sister, a brother, a sibling. You are an auntie, an uncle. You are an agitator. You are a frontline worker. You are an advocate. There are many other roles that you play. And if you don't find passion in what you do, I want to say that's okay. If you have to, grind it and work at a job where you need to be there to pay the bills, that is okay. There is no shame in ensuring financial stability for yourself and others, and having to sacrifice or to put aside certain dreams. And just know that these might be short-term sacrifices, right? For the next few years, this is something that you must do and grind it out. And then later on, you might be able to dabble into your dream job a little bit more. So my invitation is always to let people know it is okay where you are right now. There is no shame in doing that. And to know that there's never any permanency to anything, right? It might be short term for why you need to ride it out with a certain job before you land into something that is more congruent with your values.
Thank you, Shirley. Urmila.
Look, I think we all define success in different ways, right? Your definition of success may be different from mine. Success prior to the pandemic may be different than it is now, So as we go through these different stages, and coming back to, I think one thing that has echoed through this entire conversation is, who are you? And how do you want to be remembered, and how do you want to spend your time? And to Shirley's point about it's okay to be exactly where you are right now. You're loved. Not to get really sentimental here, because this is a very specific topic that we're talking about. But it's really just about being who you are. First of all, understanding that and owning that. And, here, I don't know, well, this is going to be back or front, but it says, let what you love be what you do. And it's okay to not, like Shirley said, it doesn't have to be in terms of your profession, but whatever makes you happy, do it in some way, right? And let that sort of be your guiding light, if you will. Be who you are. That's all I can say, really. Stay inspired.
Yes.
Be inspired.
Thank you all. Thank you for your time today. This is the audience. I want you to know about this team. We are an incredible set of team, and I know you're seeing this as we're going through our conversation today, which we're going to give you more. We have so many questions, and we're going to be getting to your questions. We're going to put them in the comment section on LinkedIn, and then we're going to have them answered for you. So please tune in again for more interviews that we're going to be having, more live series, more live talks. And again, I want to thank you to my team members, Urmila, Shirley, and Jason. Thank you so much for coming on board and dropping these gems that our audience needs. And I want to say that you can find us on all social media platforms. We're on Facebook, we're on LinkedIn, we are on Instagram, and we're on YouTube. And also go to our website at BIPOCsearch.com. Send us your resume, whatever resonate with you. We're here, and we're open to you. So thank you again. Thank you. Have a glorious Wednesday. It's Wednesday, right? Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Have a great day.
Bye.